All right, so there is a rumor going around that Netflix might be buying Roku, and we need to talk about this because I do not think this is happening. I think it is probably a very weird decision or weird thing that would end up happening. And there's a great clip on CNBC by someone at Lightshed Partners, Rich Greenfield, talking about this, and he does an excellent job kind of breaking this down. I want to give my thoughts, give my analysis. Ultimately, I think Netflix and Roku will be working together in the context of advertising sales because Netflix has to introduce an advertising business because no one's paying the subscription because they don't really have any good content or they don't have that much content. So they have to introduce advertising because people would be willing to not pay, but they might be able to watch some ads. In order to do that, you need extremely advanced targeting technology in order for advertisers to receive an ROI. That's why advertising is a very lucrative business, but it's a very hard business. And there's, Facebook and Google do it really well, so they get the majority of the benefit from it. But you also need to be able to provide a tracking mechanism that allows the advertisements to reach the people that are targeted, but also effectively be distributed by the service providers that use Netflix, even if they're not on, or even if they're on different distribution mechanisms, whether it's Apple TV, Roku, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of technology involved in order to make this happen. Roku and Comcast have been reported to help Netflix with this issue, and I think that'll be good. I think Roku, will be able to charge a decent premium or whatever on helping Netflix solve this problem, and maybe there's a licensing fee, whatever it is, on their technology. But Netflix is probably not buying Roku, and here is ultimately why.
Selling and pre-market trading following a Business Insider story which says employees inside Roku have been speculating about the idea of a possible acquisition by Netflix. Now, people familiar with the matter say internal chatter within Roku has heated up after the streaming device maker abruptly closed the stock trading window for all employees, and that prevented them from selling any of their vested shares at a time when they normally might be inclined to do so. Let's get reaction from Rich Greenfield from Lightshed Partners. It would be interesting. It would be kind of a big concession from Netflix that maybe they need. I don't know. They need help. They can't. Their content creativity has dried up, so they're gonna try to move into this area. But you don't think so?
Joe, I think this is one of the more absurd things I've ever heard in 20.
And that is exactly how I felt when this came out. When he said Netflix, when I just saw Netflix buying Roku, I thought this was absolutely absurd. One is a platform, one is a media company. That's what he's going to talk about here.
27 years following media stocks. Honestly, think about what Roku is. Roku is a platform, TV operating system that is built into devices and dongles as well, little sticks that you plug into TVs. And everybody wants to run on top of that TV operating system, whether it's Disney Plus or whether it's Netflix. But getting into that, actually owning the business, Netflix owning hardware and basically prioritizing one hardware, meaning themselves, over the thousands of devices that Netflix runs on, seems completely antithetical to the everything that Reed Hastings and Ted Sarandos have built over the last 20 years. So it's very hard to understand. Not to mention, Joe, as you know, Netflix's core business is not advertising, will never be advertising. Will a portion of the business now become advertising? 20%, maybe 25%. Anything is possible as they embark on adding an advertising tier. But remember, the core Netflix subscription is staying. They're going to add a lower price advertising tier to the subscription, the ad-free subscription tiers. And so it's always going to be a smaller portion of the business. And so to spend $20 billion, let's just say, to buy Roku, to make advertising this huge...
Which, by the way, would be horrible for Kathy Wood because she's betting that, Roku's a player. I mean, Roku's a $490 stock at one point. So $20 billion would be on the low end for the 7.5 million shares she has. I don't think she would be happy with a $20 billion offer.
Huge piece of the company would seem very, very out of character.
Why spend 20 when you could spend 100? Would you be surprised why Roku employees might be drumming up some interest?
Look, Joe, it doesn't surprise me at all that if I'm a Roku employee, this first of all, this speculation has been kicking around for weeks, if not, basically since Netflix announced advertising. I think Roku employees have wanted this to happen. The reality is, think about what's happened to Roku. They're facing a lot more competition. I mean, your parent company, Comcast, just recently announced a joint venture with Charter where they're doing tvOS. Samsung is getting more aggressive. Google, if you walk into a Best Buy now, you see a much bigger presence of Google TV. The TV OS wars have really heated up over the last 12 months. That's putting pressure on Roku. We're also going into an advertising recession, or a recession economically, which is going to pressure advertising, but that's also hurt Roku stock. But the real pressure has been competition for tvOS is heating up. That's exactly, if I'm Netflix, I'm benefiting from these TV operating system wars. I don't want to move. You've already got the streaming wars that you and I and your team have talked about for years that Netflix has been competing in. You're going to add a TV OS war on top of the streaming wars? That just, honestly, it sounds crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense either. Like, Netflix's goal is to be a creative content studio, unless they're going to acquire pieces of content, which they're not really doing because they're not that good at it. They're not good at making originals. They're not getting the world to give them the licensed shows because the world wants to put it on their own platforms. This is why Friends and The Office left. So it's like Netflix can't be the content aggregator that they once were. So then the question becomes, can they create their own stuff? And now, look, I'm not saying they're horrible at it. It's just Squid Game was awesome, but Stranger Things, I guess, is cool. I like that show, but when you're creating content, you have to become like a movie studio or a production studio. And, they've got some good stuff, but I don't know if it's at the level that can continue to justify people paying that much money per month, especially now when user-generated content is so much more available. So always more bullish over something like YouTube over Netflix, but buying a TV platform, just like, doesn't really make sense, along with the fact that how do you give preference, right? If you buy Roku's supposed to be this neutral layer of an operating system that allows anybody to access content. Well, if Netflix owns Roku, Netflix obviously is going to prefer them over everyone else, which is like brings in a real big conflict of interest.
So is Roku, you think, going to go eventually the way of like TiVo?
Look, Roku is a market leader in TV operating system. I think Anthony Wood has done an incredible job of getting out in front with software that's easy to use. The difference is, Becky, Brandon Ross, my partner at Lightshed, we would go to CES every year. We would walk the show floor and we would walk up to a Samsung TV or to an LG TV. And the two of us would literally laugh at each other because the software on the TV was so pathetic. Roku was so much better. It's so much easier for the average person to use. The challenge now is if you walk into a Best Buy, let alone CES if you went there, but if you walk in and look at TVs, they all kind of look pretty much similar now. Like they all sort of do the same thing. The operating systems all sort of work equally. Like the advantage.
I love Roku. We use it at home, but look, if you can get it easily elsewhere, if you don't have a moat anymore, I think that's the point. If you don't have a moat,
which is why they're creating content now. It's why at the beginning of the year, it's why we said they should buy Vizio to build their industry market share.
So this is a big point. I made a video on Anthony Wood and Roku's content plan a long time ago. I'll probably leave it at the description, but they're not. The content play is not the play, I think, for Roku, and I think Kathy is not betting on Roku being a content play. She's betting on it being like a TV advertising play at the end of the day. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But like when the guy said, you go into these stores, like all these stores look the same. So if Roku's the TV operating system and their operating system looks the same as other operating systems, or it's indistinguishable, then what differentiates you? The content. Well, how do you get the content? Right? And like you have to make the content or you have to acquire the content. And it's like, again, if Roku's going into the content business, that's not a fun business to be in because content's a very difficult business. So, I mean, like the whole thing is just, it's a clusterphobia of stuff. And like, I guess we'll see if Kathy ends up being right that the operating system matters more than the content.
So I don't think they go away like the way TiVo goes away, but I do think their market share shrinks. And I think that's sort of inevitable that the competition in this TV operating system is just going to get more and more intense because you've got huge players, Amazon, Google, Comcast, Charter, you've got Vizio, Samsung. Like you've just got a lot of players out there that I think make this that much more difficult. And it's why they're going and creating content. I mean, Roku is going to spend a tremendous amount on content over the next 12 months because they see the opportunity to, create advertising inventory, but on top of that, to try to differentiate the Roku brand.
So one of the big things about creating advertising inventory is actually making sure that you have content that you can advertise against. And the good thing about YouTube content, sorry, that was Joe Biden talking live. The good thing about YouTube content is that you don't need to worry about kind of buying the content, it's all user generated, right? So you constantly have content being uploaded to the platform. And then if you create a network effect around people consuming the content, you never have to worry about spending for content, right? People will just constantly create and promote on the platform. With these TV studios, I mean, like, I always feel they have their work cut out for them, because I'm like, it's kind of the reason I'm not bullish on Spotify with their podcasting. It's like, how many podcasts can you buy? How much more stuff can you buy versus just letting people upload to the platform and giving them discovery? So YouTube never has a content problem. Netflix and Roku always have a content problem. Roku now has to justify to people that are using the platform every day to watch the stuff that they've produced or the stuff that they've acquired. It's a hard ask when you've got something like Stranger Things, or when you've got YouTube videos, or when you got me popping up on your home feed. Like, it's a very difficult thing to do. So I am not bullish on this. I do not think Netflix is buying Roku. I am not bullish on Roku at all. I think Roku is definitely attractive from a price perspective. It's doing $3 billion in revenue, $12 billion market cap. You could definitely say it's undervalued just in terms of the EV to EBITDA valuation as well. But the problem is, what is the long-term significance of a TV operating system in comparison with everything else that exists? And if they're switching to a content play, what is their moat when it comes to content? Because if Netflix doesn't have a content moat, like HBO is struggling, like Roku is going to be the content winner. I don't know about that. So ultimately, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Is Netflix going to buy Roku? Are you in Netflix? Are you in Roku? Netflix just got reduced its price target to $157 right now as well. So we're going to end up seeing what happens with these two stocks. I think they will collaborate. I don't think one of them will buy each other. It would be funny if Roku buys Netflix. They're like, nah, screw you. We're buying you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one.